Behind me you have some of Canada's and United States' best ocean scientists and advocates in one spot. And we've challenged them to answer the question, why should I care about the ocean and the work you do? And we've given them 2 minutes to answer the question. So on our mark, get set, go.
You should care about the diversity in the oceans. What that sea cucumber is doing, pooping on the seafloor, really does matter to us. The ocean floor, the oceans provide services to all of the planet, including the human ecosystem. So diversity also creates resilience to change, the changes that we are invoking in the system, and we need what the ocean is doing for it, not just to provide fish for the table, but we need it to provide services for taking in our waste and providing oxygen to breathe. And sometimes we don't even know what's going to be in the future. So that sponge may well be providing the fiber optic technology for the future because of how it lays down its silica. And that is being looked at currently by some engineering companies. So by protecting what we have today, our children in the future may be making spectacular discoveries that can take them even beyond this planet. And finally, you know, it's incredible what's out there. And life is awesome in terms of what it has to give us.
Dear colleagues, she did it in 1:25. Reset. Claire Healy.
Obviously, there are lots of functional reasons that we need to protect all of the biodiversity, not just what I work on, but all of the biodiversity everywhere on the planet. The ocean is an enormous resource for biodiversity. It's an enormous reservoir of biodiversity. And not just the functions we know of, ecological functions, food, etc., all of these aspects, we continue to add to what is known in terms of how we can use and what we can learn from the taxa and the things that are in the ocean. So what I think it really comes down to is all of this life is our natural heritage. It's our heritage as the dominant species on the planet, and it's our responsibility to maintain and protect it, and to really take very seriously the fact that when one thing goes extinct, you will never have it again. It's a permanent loss, and it's our fault often. All of this loss that's occurring, it really does come down to something often that humanity has done. So if we don't take all of that into consideration, we're really missing a huge opportunity to gain a lot of resources, gain a lot of knowledge, and obviously, aside from all of that, just to appreciate the things that surround us and make life interesting.
1:29, Claire. Jay Nichols, you're next up.
Space bar is, okay, just one slide there, right?
You're good to go, the time's started.
Okay, so life on our planet requires resilience. Resilience requires biological diversity, cultural diversity, and economic diversity. And you've heard today already how the ocean plays into all of those kinds of diversity. But what we haven't talked about is emotional diversity. That is not a newly discovered species from the bottom of the sea. That's a neuron deep inside your brain. And emotional diversity connected to resilience is connected to healthy water. How many people have seen the ocean this year? How about a lake or a river? Did it help you relax when you saw it? Imagine all of the stress that water has sucked out of the country, out of Canada. All of the brains that have had their stress reduced. Imagine all of the stress that the water has reduced, looking at the ocean, walking through an aquarium. Now take all that stress and throw it back into your society. Uh-oh, not good. So thank you to the ocean and the water for removing that stress from our society making us more resilient. I rest my case.
A minute 38. Not bad, Jay. Next up is Peter.
Thanks, Dave. You haven't had the benefit of hearing me give you the backgrounder on my study animals. If you're with us tomorrow, you'll hear more about killer whales and other marine mammals and what they tell us about the world's oceans. And to me, these are the messengers. These are the critters that cooperate with me, that deliver integrated information about ocean health. And it's a humbling time when you spend time on the water. You run into killer whales. We capture harbor seals or sea otters. We take little samples from them. We try to understand them. We don't harm them. We release them or we let them go. And we let them remind us of what we are really valuing in the world's oceans. And to killer whales in British Columbia that can live up to 90 or 100 years, these animals are great reminders to me about the industrial age and the chemical revolution and the way in which we have polluted the world's oceans. Many of the killer whales that we have frequenting the waters off the coast of British Columbia were born before World War II. Were born before we invented DDT or PCBs or PBDEs or many of these other chemicals that have impacted on our health and ocean health and on their health. So to me, these marine mammals are not only valuable from a human perspective, from a social perspective, from an ecotourism perspective. For example, killer whales, $100 million a year in British Columbia in direct economic spin-off. These are sustainable, iconic creatures that remind us of mortality and on this planet and the way in which we venture forth. But they're wonderful study subjects to work with and highly threatened because of some of their vulnerabilities. They're endangered, many of these populations. They're very, very contaminated because they're at the top of the food chain. They're very long-lived, and they have very, very large habitat needs. And so to me, wonderful scientific tools and outreach tools. So we'll talk to you more about that tomorrow.
So we'll give him a bit of slack because he hasn't really spoken to you yet. He was at 2 minutes and 14 seconds, Peter. Okay, so there was an exchange. There's a market going on up here. Next up is Dr. Pete Ewens again.
Okay, I'm here. 1 second. So I'll give another 20 seconds. Basically, you heard some of my answer there earlier. There's really three reasons for this. One is because our future is the future of our kids and the grandkids and so on. So we just shouldn't be screwing it up. Two is because we are a selfish species, especially collectively. And so all of this stuff about costs and benefits globally and the role of the oceans in actually moderating, in my case, the sea ice, but ocean function too, moderating the extremes in the world's climate. As Nicholas Stern has said, it's a no-brainer. I mean, the costs of inaction now and making these same mistakes are just a legacy of much bigger problems and impossibilities for the future. So because we're selfish, that's why we should actually do the right thing now so we don't leave this stuff. And number three, as you'll hear about this afternoon, I think this is great. It's the blue marble, our one blue planet. And I look forward to Jay's talk, but remember that marble, because we live in this marble, so we've got a responsibility to look after this fabulous marble. Thank you.
A new record from Pete, a minute 10. So second to last up here, Dr. John Nightingale.
Oceans are the biggest part of the Earth. They cover the 70% of the Earth's surface. When scientists talk about the rainforest being the lungs of the planet, don't believe it. 60 to 70% of the oxygen we breathe comes from the ocean. The ocean are the primary source of animal protein for 4 billion people on Earth. It regulates our weather. You've heard a lot of the other interactions. It has inspired symphonies, poets, novels, movies. It contributes to our culture in immeasurable ways. And I guess to follow up on Chris, I have grandchildren. I don't want written on my tombstone, or I don't want my grandchildren saying, those idiots, they were selfish, they took for themselves, and they didn't provide for a future. So I think we need to know more about the oceans. We live in a country that's cutting its ocean research funding. At a time we need to know more. That's probably true around the world with governments under economic stress and less able to pay for more science, which we need. We need much better mechanisms for taking that science and turning it into management and policy. And those decisions need to be made on a broader basis through society.
Thanks, John. Well done. Minute 22. Very good, very good. I'm gonna finish up here. And you may have noticed already I'm a bit of a sort of a tangent type storyteller. So my story really has to do with a trip that we did this summer. My family and I hadn't gone on a vacation in a long, long time because I came from a job at the zoo to the job here. There wasn't the time. So we decided to go on an RV trip to Nova Scotia with my wife, both daughters, my mother-in-law. So again, that's me and 4 women in the RV to Nova Scotia. My children had never seen the ocean, a 9-year-old and a 13-year-old. When we arrived, I think the first bit of ocean we saw was in Musquodoboit Harbor, which is about an hour north of Halifax. And the impression that they got when they saw, and it was Gulf streamy, so it was 21 degrees Celsius outside, and the water temperature was 14 degrees Celsius. So we actually swam, and it blew them away. And so I picked up this paper in Digby near the end of our tour. So the second part of my story is that this is like a fishing news paper sort of thing, community-style newspaper. But the conversations happening in Clark's Harbor, in Digby, around the sustainability of their livelihoods and their fisheries, and their interest in the fact that a killer whale had been seen in the Bay of Fundy was contagious, was absolutely contagious. So I guess the moral of my story and the answer to the question of why should we care about oceans and the work you do is my job is to somehow translate these stories to the million people that come into the museum. And I think we do it through our kids, and I think we do it through our communities. And I didn't time it at all. I was too busy preparing for the meeting to practice this even, but a minute 46. No.